This media is brought to you by Kalaboukis.
In the realm of tomorrow, where tech meets mind, we ponder, we dream.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to finally meet you because this is how we meet each other nowadays, over Zoom. This is in person. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Thank you. So it's wonderful being here. So thank you very much for having me. I run a venture capital firm. That means we invest in very early stage startups. We do that particularly in infrastructure software. So that's going to be AI, data, engineering, cybersecurity. We manage $300 million. I sit on roughly a dozen boards, and that's what we do.
Wow. And how'd you get into this?
I used to be at a hedge fund, and I used to run data for a large hedge fund. And it was great. But over time, I found that working with early stage startups at the beginning was more as an advisor, and then through a university, and then sort of one thing leads to another was where my passion really lied. And there's just something really cool about spending time with founders who are changing the world and making huge pivots every day, which is the opposite of a hedge fund when you're dealing with huge multi-billion-dollar corporations. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun.
Very cool. How long have you been doing this now?
So we launched the firm in January 2018. So soon we'll be coming up to our 7th birthday.
Wow, fantastic. So how have you found things have changed over the since you started in this space?
A lot is changing. I think there's a number of big trends going on in venture. Anybody following venture closely will know that it was very hot not so long ago, and then very cold not so long after that. And then
what happened to cool it off? I mean, what was the ice age just sort of swooped in? I mean,
it's
what
gone out
happened?
the window. It's sort of like when you're in the shower and you can't get the temperature right. It's either sort of boiling hot or freezing cold. So we're somewhere.
Struggle I have every day, by the way.
Yeah. So that's where we sort of are, between very hot, very cold, and hopefully going towards a sensible norm. And then in parallel, there's a number of other trends, sort of one being massive venture capital firms, which are really not venture capital firms anymore. It's more sort of conglomerates trying to sort of collect assets, and that's distorting the market a bit and really changing how VC is probably going to end up panning out. And then maybe just another one to throw out there is sort of AI, which is changing. I mean, every couple of years you have a new big shift in technology, and it feels like this is a big one and very much here to stay, unlike some of the other sort of potential ones that came along.
But it's kind of overshadowing crypto, right? I mean, it's like one after the other. So when you first started, what was the hot thing in 2018? Was it 2018? What you said 2019 when you first started?
So we started. Yes, it's sort of gone. The hot thing has gone from sort of crypto, NFTs, a little bit of digital health through COVID, telemedicine, and all these things are not necessarily bad, but they sort of trade at ridiculous multiples, and anything is, and then sort of end up getting to a more sensible place.
Right. But the VCs, you want them to trade at ridiculous multiples, right? That's why you keep hopping. Most of them keep hopping on the next hot thing, right? I mean, what is that the reason? I mean, what's the reason why?
I'm not sure it's so good. So here's the issue. If I could buy at a low multiple and sell at a high multiple, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't control the market. So what I'm really trying to do is invest in a good company. And then ideally the good company also knows when the right point is to sell, if to sell or to go public, etc. But I think the key is get into a good company and invest in good people, and timing the market is one of the hardest things.
Timing is impossible. I mean, if you have that, then you've figured everything else out, right?
So, I mean, if it's a terrible idea, I'm not sure timing would help. But yeah, one of the things I've done recently is I wrote this book, which is now being published and sort of getting a lot of traction. And the idea behind it is basically sort of helping founders and managers think about decision making a bit like an AI algorithm does. And one of the things I mentioned there is timing. and I show how algorithms learn how to try, even though it knows it can't get it perfectly, but it tries to optimize certain sort of decisions. And so, to give an example, you can see how sort of Walmart, when you're searching for something on the Walmart's website, learns at what point to stop trying to find a better result and just give you the best result, versus other times it's going to wait that extra sort of millisecond longer, which it knows might sort of decrease the user satisfaction every extra millisecond, but it's trading off the point in time where it should be giving you the result back.
Right.
I think in that particular case, I also give an example of a DJ. Of he knows he has a great song, but the question is, when in the party do you sort of play the song? So you can't show it right at the beginning. So the timing is obviously a key aspect.
Well, I think that this has happened to me many times throughout my career, is that, especially when I'm working in innovation groups, is that we come up with these great ideas, but the timing to launch them is completely wrong. I mean, and you see companies envision these things 10 years ago and they're coming true today, or the technologies reach today. So it's trying to sort of judge the timing. It's almost impossible. I mean, when you just have to be sort of happen to be in the right place at the right time. Like, for example, YouTube, there was hundreds of other video streaming services at the time. Why did YouTube suddenly become the leader?
So that's an excellent sort of question. And by the way, venture capitalists nearly always look for in the deck slide that you're going to be getting, why now? So why is the idea sort of now is the moment for this idea to thrive? But I do think there is some solutions for timing, which doesn't mean you always get it right. But if I go back to one of the techniques that AI uses, is that it doesn't see time as fixed, but rather something it can negotiate with. So just going back to that example I gave earlier. So think about Walmart now. Walmart knows that every I think they even published this not so long ago, every 0.1 seconds of extra time that it takes its algorithm to give you a result will mean that they will lose $100 million in annual sales. So if everything worked 0.1% slower, that would be the outcome. So it's a big number. On the other hand, if every time you search for something, it gave you back complete nonsense, nothing just gave you back the fastest thing, obviously there would be very few sales. I'm searching for, I don't know, a Christmas present for the winter, and it's giving you back something. Right. So one of the things the algorithms are learning to do is not see time as something fixed, which is what it used to do. Whatever result you have after 0.5 seconds, return it. The algorithm is learning, how good do I think I have reached at 0.4 seconds? If it's really good, maybe I should save on this 0.1 seconds and give back a fast result. And sometimes I'll take 0.5, 0.6, even 0.7 seconds, because I've predicted that these extra tiny incremental changes will make a big enough difference to justify that. And if you look at the website, and you can all do this as we speak, if you go to any website today, like any retailer or otherwise, they've taken it even further. I mean, it's interesting that we went down the path of time. We didn't know that. But one of the things that they do is they take it a step further and they start saying, 1 second, not all of my decisions, meaning the entire website, has to also be fixed. So not only am I negotiating with when, but what? So sometimes the website will say, you know what, I need a bit more time for this part of the screen, but this part of the screen, the banner, I can send you immediately. So sometimes you look at it loading, you can actually see this piece and this piece came really quick, and this piece took a little bit longer. So time is becoming a variable in more and more ways, and therefore it's getting to a better outcome. Right.
So it's almost like, it's interesting you mentioned that it's almost like human beings are learning from AI.
100%.
Yeah.
So my big
goes both ways.
Well, so look, so this is interesting you say that, because that's exactly was the point of the book, which is not technical at all. But the point is, as an example, and I don't think I even gave this in the book, but so if you look at chess players, they used to sort of train by reading chess books of what did great players do. And that's what they used to do into the middle of the night. And then there was this pivotal moment where I think it was Kasparov lost to, I think it was Deep Blue. And everyone's like, okay, that's the end. Computers are sort of taking over the world, etc. And you could argue that from that point on, the best players were computers. Fine. But there was change, which was, in my mind, no less significant. And that is slowly, chess players globally today, even not just Kasparov, when they are analyzing their game, they are often asking the computer, what move would you have made? Does it mean it's the best move to make? No. Sometimes you should see the move the computer suggests and say, no, I've got a more creative, different, and go down your own path. But more and more chess players who want to improve their game are asking the software, the increasingly sophisticated software, and even the AI, what would you recommend I do? And sometimes I will, and sometimes I won't listen. So the point of the book was really, there are certain decisions in our lives where we don't have to listen to AI, but not asking it what it would do is just suboptimal. So it was certain things like timing and a few others where I think AI has got into a place where we can just learn to ask ourselves a series of questions that AI would ask. You don't have to be technical to do this, and therefore come to a better outcome.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, personally, I think, if you think about AI, it's not just a machine. It's all this human input that's been put into a machine, and the machine just sort of like tries to decide what you want to hear next. So really, when you're asking AI, you're not just asking a machine, you're asking all of humanity that's been put into it.
You are in a certain, what I would like to allow people to do is to benefit from the billions of dollars that Google, Amazon, Nvidia, and others have spent on optimizing their algorithms, which has made them very wealthy. Yes. I would like us to be able to benefit from some of that in our own decision-making on what university course to study and whether we should think about buying a house or taking a mortgage or anything like that.
But that's what I'm trying to say, is that there's human knowledge embedded in there as well. I mean, 100%. It's not just the AI. The AI is full of human knowledge that we're tapping. So people, you don't use AI because they're like, oh, I'm just talking to a machine. But they're not talking to a machine. They're talking to a lot of they're getting a lot of human knowledge back when they're talking to this machine at the same time.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's pivot a little bit to the VC stuff. So there's a lot of startup founders who listen to my show. And if someone's interested in, like, how does it change? Like you said, there had to be a slide in there talking about why now, right? On timing. It's like, what do you need to do to sort of not ensure success, but make it a little more possible when talking to VCs nowadays? Like, what are they looking for? I mean, I can understand the base level stuff, but is there something new and different that they're looking for? Does it have to have AI in it? Like, what's there?
Okay, so that's a really hard question to answer, and I'll make a few sort of general comments.
Okay.
Pitching to a VC is not a science, but an art.
Mm.
There isn't a path that if you do 1, 2, 3 will equal sort of 4, definite success. And there'll be a lot of examples that any of your viewers and many others can say, but look, somebody did the complete opposite of what you said, and look what amazing success. And the opposite is true. I did everything and to a much better sort of, So that's number one. Number two is the real answer to the question is try and build the startup as though it's a train that has already left the station, meaning it's off to success. And the venture capital firm now has to run to catch up and somehow get on board at this station.
Right.
If you are pitching saying, I need your highness's capital so that I can move to the next station, it's harder. So whatever, and it's, it's easy for me to say this from my position, and some people say, well, what am I supposed to do, etc. It's really hard to answer this generically, but the reality is the folks that the venture capitalists are chasing are ones that are already sort of off to the races. If you look at their startup, they're obviously going to need capital. Nobody thinks they're going to be able to do this without.
Why would they be talking to you unless they wanted capital, right? Or looking for capital?
I mean, it's not for my pretty face. So like they want things to start coming together regardless. And you want to see this. And then the third thing is I would try and tell your story backwards. So I'll explain this. Often founders come along and say, what I did is I started at point A. I then moved to point B. I'm now at point C. So I've had to hear all this sort of backward story of what brought us today, which is probably half the pitch and sort of very little time left. And then what we're going to do is get to point D. And from point D, we'll get to point E. And it's a lot, whatever. Often the best way to pitch is to say, in 2020, 2028, I'm going to be worth $1 billion because I will be selling $100 million in revenue recurrent in this path. Now, let me tell you how I'm going to get there. And by the way, at this point, you've 100% got my attention. In 2026, I will already be here. And I'll be here. And once I'm here, it's pretty easy to get to 2028 because whatever. And as a result of 2026, in 2024 or turning 2025, I need to be at this point.
Right.
And I can tell you what I did to get here if that's of interest. But like, this is the pitch. Now, that has got my attention. And the questions I'm going to ask myself is 2028 a big company? You've sort of answered that. Do I believe that 2026 will get to 2028? And do I believe that 2025 will lead to 2026? But often that backwards pitch is so much more powerful than sort of 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 6. Yeah. So, I mean, I can make some other comments, but those are a few that I would try and test.
No, that's exactly, it's funny you should mention that, because that's exactly how I do my backcasting service, where we go, let's think about where we're going to be in 10 years, and then let's think about how to get there in 5 years, and then what we need to do today to get to that point. So, I mean, that's definitely that's a fantastic way of putting it, because you're right. I mean, what happened in the past is the past, right? You need to look into the future and see where these company is going to be at that point. Right. So that's a fantastic pitch.
So I'll add something else to that third point, which I think is maybe I said between the lines, but it is really critical. So for me, I'm a little bit obsessed with this idea of local maximum. That's like what I wrote the whole book about, etc. But one of the things that founders often do is they try and make sure that every day they're moving up. So every step they take is in the right direction, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. The challenge with doing every day a little bit better than yesterday is you're nearly definitely going to end up in a local maximum. You will end up reaching a good point, but maybe not the best point you could, because every day you had to necessarily move a little bit better. Imagine somebody in the desert and every day they have to move. They're trying to get to the highest point. So they're trying to climb to the top of the tallest mountain. And every day, every step they take has to be up. So they're on one mountain. There might be a much taller mountain over there, but they can't move there because every second they have to take a step up. And to get there, they're going to have to go down to go up. So, but the pitch that I suggested to you and the one that you said you do anyway, which is the 10-year, 5-year backwards one, wouldn't necessarily require you to go up at every step. It requires you to find the tallest peak in the field, which might be over there. And I'm now telling you why 2026 is on the way to 2028. I'm going down here, building some deep tech thing, whatever. So I'm not maybe moving up in sales, whatever it is, but eventually I'm going to be worth billions and billions of dollars. And there's a beautiful quote, which I'm going to screw up, but you get the gist of it, from Bill Gates, which he talks about climate change, and he's become a bit of a guru in climate change. And it's the type of thing that if somebody like me said it, they'd say, oh, what the hell are you talking about? But he said it in his book, so you can look it up. And he says something along the lines of the 2030 goals are unfortunately not leading us to the 2050 goals, which is so weird, because you would have thought to yourself, 1 second, if humanity hits the 2030 goals, that sounds good. We should be then hitting the 2050. And if we don't hit the 2030, we could be in the wrong direction. He goes on to explain that some of the things humanity will be required to do to hit the 2030 goals, we're going to then have to dismantle to hit the 2050 goals. So it's this notion of a local maximum, where I would then argue to entrepreneurs, back to the point that you made, which is, if you can pitch to me that this is the pinnacle, this is going to be the next decacorn, whatever you want to call it, tridic, whatever, it is much more powerful, especially when you work backwards, than when you have to prove the whole time that you're always taking an incremental step up.
Right. Absolutely. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about how you invest. I mean, is it still the same? I mean, what I've heard is you find like 100 companies to work with, hoping that one will be successful. Are you a little more?
No, so I'll give you some of our stats. So our stats is we will probably get somewhere in the range of 1,000 to 1,400 decks a year. We'll probably meet 300 to 400 of those companies. We'll probably do deep due diligence on 30 to 50 of them. And we'll end up investing somewhere between 5 and 8 of them.
Oh, so it's a very small number in the end.
Yes, it's a pretty big, and we're now investing out of our third fund. So it's still a bit early, because VC sometimes is a bit like whiskey. So you sort of put it in a barrel, you don't know what's going to happen for many years, and then you pop it open. So it's still a little bit of a way till our fund one, which is 6 years old now. So we still have a little bit, but it's thankfully looking good. But I would say it's not 1 out of 100. It's hopefully a much higher ratio of success. One thing that helps us a lot is that we're very focused on specific verticals, which going back to your question on what is changing in the VC landscape, I think is a way the world is eventually going, where you'll have less generalists who in the morning are experts in quantum computing, in the afternoon are experts in CRISPR technology, and in the evening, I mean, and I'm saying are experts as a semi-joke, because it's very hard to be an expert in every single field. And what is likely to happen is you're going to, I think, outside of the massive VCs who are trying to be like an umbrella and a variety of, and mainly an asset manager, you'll have more focused venture firms, which are a crossover between geography, vertical stage, and really try and become the experts in a specific area.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think AI is going to continue to be a huge thing for a while, or do you think there's something else on the horizon that we should be thinking about?
Yes, but so I think yes, but we are not. So there's a massive difference between saying, will AI be a big thing, and should we be investing in AI, and sort of caveating the difference between those. So we made a number of AI investments very early on. So 2018 was our first, 2019.
Wait a minute. I thought AI didn't come out until 21.
Yeah, so the context of sort of an AI company, some of them were calling themselves sort of machine learning or whatever. They weren't quite branded that way, but those are ones that are really succeeding today. I think investing today in certain AI spaces, to your point of why now, might be a challenging timing. So today we are actively investing, but less so in the quote unquote classic AI spaces. And we're investing, if you want, I'm happy to elaborate on it, but mainly on derivatives that we think will happen as a result of AI.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. So I mean, putting back my sort of hedge fund, I used to work at a hedge fund hat on. So one of the things that the hedge fund did very successfully is they saw Amazon sort of rising. This is many years ago, and they were big investors in Amazon and did well out of it. And one of the questions that the team then was asking is, what should we invest in next, or what other positions? And it's very hard to predict what will be the next big internet or e-commerce, or will there be another, or where will that go? An easier prediction to make is, if you believe Amazon will be very big, which today sounds obvious, but back in 2010 wasn't as obvious.
Well, back when they were just a retailer. I mean, I think most of their income now comes from services, right?
Yeah, that as well. But even 10 years ago, so 2015, it wasn't as obvious how big and quite. But an easier bet to make was, if you believed Amazon was going to be really big, what else would that affect?
Right.
So what other implications? Should I be shorting a company that I think Amazon will just dominate? Should I be imagining other companies being built as a result of this? So going back to AI, I think it's I mean, I'm caveating everything, but I think it's a fairly reasonable prediction to say that AI will eventually creep into many aspects of our lives, whether it's just S&P 500 companies that are now thinking about how to integrate AI into their stack. So the next question we're asking ourselves is, what will that then lead to? So I'll give a number of examples. Like, one of the things we made, were decisions we made 2 years ago when AI, or 2.5 years, when AI really started to take off, was we invested in a cybersecurity company for AI. And we knew that this was a company that maybe the S&P 500 sort of CISO, chief security officer, didn't need right now. But if you believe AI will become as sort of fragmented, he will need to defend against this. Another example would be data cleansing. So a lot of the S&P 500 companies today want to use AI, and they actually say, I could use this LLM, I could use that LLM. The problem I have is not which LLM to use, it's my stack. tech stack is so bloody old that
Oh,
I
right.
can't run anything on it.
Yeah.
But an investment we made sort of 2 years ago was companies that could help upgrade this old ship pipeline so that AI could be leveled on top. So these are examples of second derivatives. So do I think AI will be big? Yes. Would I necessarily invest in a sort of plain vanilla AI company coming along today? I think it would have to be something really different, because otherwise I just think it might be too late to your timing point.
Right.
But I would definitely look at second derivatives. People say that AI is going to be keys at 1, 2, 3, 4, and therefore
Yeah, it's
we
kind of,
are.
you're almost like building the infrastructure for companies to implement the AI, right? As opposed to the end result.
That's a derivative of it. It
Yeah.
could be something else. So, like, yeah, but so we are actively today investing and looking at derivatives of AI much more than sort of
And would you
smack
say
of your
that
face.
that's a common thing for VCs, or you guys are ahead of the
No,
curve?
I don't know if we're ahead, but we're different.
Awesome. So it's time to think like a future. It's the year 2034, 10 years from now. Where do you think we're going to be in 10 years? Where do you think your industry is going to be in 10 years? Are you going to have automated VCs that are like AI is automatically investing across the board in new companies, or where are we going to be in 10 years?
So we're talking about venture capital, not AI.
Either.
Where, okay, so on venture, I still think a huge portion of venture is people.
Mm.
And I think it's underappreciated. Like ultimately, when I invest or we invest in a team, the team can pivot and it can change 10 ideas. The landscape can change, and it probably will change. Like we have yet to invest in a company that has not changed something in its product over the course of the first few years.
Everyone pivots.
Everybody pivots. How much? To what extent? Yeah, maybe it's just the integrations, and it could be something sort of massive, right? So that's sort of, and then you think about the market, and you could try and predict the market, but like even the biggest experts in the market obviously find it hard to predict. Either it's the time, the way certain customers will get. The one factor that you're actually investing in, especially at seed, is the 1, 2, 3 entrepreneurs that are sitting in front of you. Like that is going to stay fixed. So getting to know them, spending time, seeing if you guys can work together in a positive way. And I think especially when you think about focused VCs rather than just generic ones, it's what value we can bring to the table, how we can potentially shortcut sort of a lot of the process for them. But that piece is unlikely, I think, to go away. It's a little bit like maybe in healthcare saying, if you just wanted the treatment and you know what the treatment is, that could be done very quickly by AI scanning something or whatever. And
Sure.
so maybe the documents, the term sheets, the transactions, the updates to the board, the compliance. By the way, most VCs today use DocuSend or HelloSign or something like that, which has made it so much easier for the entrepreneurs. What, you're faxing them something, or you're sending them an email and trying to follow up? Could you please sort of print this out,
Yeah, it's
sign
a real
it, and
game
send it
changer,
off?
actually. It's
Oh
amazing.
my goodness. And so like like these small changes can make a huge difference. So a lot of the processes can be much easier. Maybe we spend less time together or more time in other, but the human side, so the nurse, the doctor that you want to be able to consult with, the 9 or 10 or 12 o'clock at night call where you just want to be able to like ping some ideas and see how you think somebody would respond. That in my mind is unlikely to disappear, and that will stick around. I do think the industry at VC, as I said, will change a lot, especially with these large venture firms raising more and more capital. And one factor that we didn't mention is global politics. So geopolitics will change, and you can see sort of the US, China just starting to have effects, and that will play a big part into 2034. So yeah, and then on AI, I think a lot will change, especially since you said 10 years. So I think 12 months, 24 months is easier to predict, especially because people know what they want in the short term, and their key challenge, when I say there, It's like the S&P 500 customers and the movers, so the people who can. So they typically know what they want, but it will take them 12 and 24 months to implement it because they have a gazillion issues. 2034 is going to be bigger changes. And maybe if I just have to leave on a thought there, I think the hardest part to predict is not necessarily how good AI will get, but it's how much compliance and the legality and governments and a lot of that will push back. And so I could see this getting really far. The question is, what will this dance end up leading us to?
Right. Well, which is exactly what we usually do is we go too far and then we have to pull back. Right. And that's what I think we're going to do. We're going to go too far. We're going to do something that's just so far out there that is like on the edge of the Overton window, and people are like, okay, I don't want to go there. And we'll bring things back again, because that's typically what we end up doing. It's almost happened with all sorts of technology. I like to use the music as an analogy. So when we started using computers to create music, it was all weird alien sounds and strange and stuff like that. And then when we use computers to sample, that became the way we did music, right? And it's going to be the same with all of these technologies. We're going to push the boundaries of it as far as we can, but then we're going to probably have to pull back because we just went too far.
Yeah, I would say that there's a number of decisions that are going to be made that will have extremely far-reaching ripple effects for many years to come. And it's sort of like a technology can go down one of a few paths. And if governments break up big corporations like Google, which they're discussing, and say this is a path that we're going to start taking, corporations will think about that well in advance and go down a certain path.
Yeah.
If governments start saying no AI can run on personalized data, maybe in China you'll see certain things, but in Western Europe, people who are now spending their dollars on training algorithms will from the get-go go down a certain path. So I think we it's not the next 2 years, but the next 10 years, a number of policies, and it sometimes is not even decisions. It's a court case that goes one way rather than another. And then everybody just says, well, because they ruled that way, we're going to start doing this way. And that will lead this technology down certain paths.
Right. So it's still to come. We don't know where it's going to go. I love it.
That's definitely fair to say.
So thank you so much. This has been great. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
So we now got a website. So you can go to judahtaubb.com, but we've also got Hetz.vc. I've got a LinkedIn. So I'm pretty out there.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll put your stuff in the show notes, and people want to get in touch with you, they can do it that way. So thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you, Chris.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Pixels and philosophies merge and mold, a future untold, unseen.